Welcome to Hidden Brookline. Today, you're going to explore what is hidden. It's a hidden piece of our history, and it's hidden in plain sight. It's the history of slavery in Brookline.
It's also a history of freedom, too. And it's a hidden history that's been hidden for over 200 years.
And it's a history that most people still don't know.
I'm Malcolm Cawthorne.
And I'm Barbara Brown.
This is Brookline Town Hall. This building isn't very old, but Brookline is. And in 1705, Brookline becomes an official town within Massachusetts Bay Colony. They fought the Revolutionary War to form the United States of America, a new country, independent from England. That war started not far from Brookline, in the towns of Lexington and Concord.
It's this plaque that shows that on April 19, 1775, all of these men fought at the Battle of Lexington. It's this plaque where people are hidden in plain sight. And it shows that several of them were enslaved. They were not free. Slavery in Massachusetts was legal. It was legal in all 13 colonies. We now estimate that there were roughly 80 people who were enslaved in Brookline. The names of 3 of these people are hidden in this plaque. I wonder if you've ever walked by, and I especially wonder, have you seen their names? I'm going to give you some clues. The first clue is that they're all down at the bottom. Can you find them? The second clue is that they don't have last names.
It's hard to hear somebody not having a last name. They may have probably been given the name from the slave owner.
And it probably made it easier for the enslavers to think of each enslaved person as without family, because then they can sell them and not feel badly. So they don't have a name that is truly theirs.
It's interesting to talk about theirs, because the next clue is really about the apostrophe S. We can see here Esquire Gardner's Adam, Esquire White's Peter, and Esquire Boylston's Prince. This is about possession.
It's their property, like my table and my house. It's their property to do with
as they see fit.
Over the last century, probably 500,000 people have walked past this plaque. And how many have noticed that at the bottom there were 3 men who were enslaved and who fought for the country's independence and didn't get their freedom?
They were just 3 people, but there were more enslaved persons here in Brookline. Makes me wonder, who were they? What do we know about them? Here's a map of Brookline. In the 1700s, people had farms as big as huge parks, and a lot of them had enslaved people to work on those farms. And this is how much land was owned by enslavers. Let's imagine going back in time. We'd see enslaved people walking or riding on horse-drawn wagons, taking food they grew on the farms to sell in Boston. And inside the great houses, a few of them still standing today in Brookline, were these captive men and women, maybe baking in the kitchen for the family before sleeping in a quiet corner.
What were the lives of the enslaved people like? There's very little we know, but we can say pretty certainly that they were lonely. Violence was common in slavery, and people who lived here as enslaved people were often afraid. In 1773, a group of enslaved men petitioned in writing the legislature to express how they felt it was to be enslaved. And they said, "We have no wives, no children, no country." And they wanted their freedom.
What about Adam, Peter, and Prince? What happened to them?
We know so little about the three men because the history books were all written by the enslavers and their friends. But Prince, we know an astounding thing about Prince. It's wonderful. Prince escaped. He'd had independence, he wanted freedom. And how do we know all of this? Because his enslaver thought he was so valuable that he took out an ad in the newspaper and offered a reward for his return.
I think it's also really important that we point out just how courageous, how scary, and how dangerous escaping is. You don't know where you will stay, where you will get your next meal, if you will have shelter, what happens if you get caught again. All of that is so frightening.
Just a few steps away from the plaque is another hidden hero, John Wilson. John Wilson was one of the greatest artists of the 20th century in the United States, and he lived in Brookline for almost 50 years. People in Brookline bought this sculpture by John Wilson of Dr. King. And what a sculptor does, he doesn't just do a photograph. The sculptor shows you what he sees in Dr. King. What do you see from what he sees?
When I look at this, I see sadness, but I also see determination, and I also see power. It helps remind us that he was a living, breathing person with a lot of emotions and feelings, and still fought for a better United States. When I think about these stories, whether it's the slaves or enslaved people who fought at Lexington and Concord, or John Wilson or Dr. King, I often wonder, why didn't I learn about these when I was a student in Brookline, growing up in Brookline? I probably only heard of Dr. King, and perhaps not with the emotion or the feeling that we're talking about.
You're a history teacher. I'm hoping that students will not just learn the facts, but will learn with their heart. What do you think?
There's real human emotion behind those facts. That what we learn about is about real people in real time who were scared, courageous, fought, died, and did all these things in the course of a lifetime.
There are more histories hidden in Brookline. An Underground Railroad house where people escaping from slavery in the South hid on their own road to freedom. It's the home of a man who had perhaps the most beautiful voice in the whole world. But here in the United States, no concert hall would allow him to sing simply because he was Black. Finally, you will hear how a group of 8 to 13-year-olds persuaded the town leaders that their school should be named for a Black woman because she was a national figure for women's rights and for Black rights.
When I think about the courage of the people we've learned about, it reminds me that we can all take a strong stance for what is better and good in our society. That not just these historical figures, but you can be someone who stands up in society, what we call an upstander. You can be the one that makes a change. You can be the one that stands up for what's right, even when it's complicated, even when it's controversial. That is within all of us, and it is within you.
Yeah. Let's go look at the other sites.
Yeah, let's go to number 2.
Yeah, number 2, and then number 3.
Yeah.